Okay, there's a lot of crazy bad stuff happening in the world right now, but here's the thing. We can't do bad news all the time, so let's talk about the history of beer and lady beer witches and cool beer monks and a beer goddess. There is so much chaos to come. Okay, so beer's been around for roughly a gazillion years, aka like 13,000 years, which is so many, but it was pretty different back then. It was sort of a beer soup because it couldn't be strained. So beer's been around for forever. We're not totally sure how people came about it, but probably people were like nomadic in the Mesopotamia area and gathered up some wild grain and then accidentally left it outside in the rain and it got all broken down and they were like, oh shoot, my bee, I should go make some bread with this and heat it up and listen. I don't get all the science, but basically they accidentally made beer. And then once they made it on accident, they were like, oh shoot, we gotta make this stuff on purpose. So they made a bunch of beer and everybody loved it. And then the Sumerians made a civilization and settled down and built early breweries and it was good because it was like lots of nutrients and calories, which seems like a lie, but it was real. And so people were like, I gotta get my grains and my vegetables, I gotta have beer. And I, for one, think we gotta bring that back. Also, beer was like more filtered and boiled and genuinely safe than actual water, so it was truly better for you than water. And again, I say we gotta bring that back. Also, there was a goddess of brewing named Ninkasi, and there's a 4,000-year-old poem honoring her, which has the oldest surviving beer recipe. What a queen. Anyway, then we have Egypt. Beer was a big thing there in the early dynastic period. They had a bunch of grains and a daily beer ration for everybody and a bunch of specific kinds of beer for specific purposes. And the examples I found were dark beer, sweet beer, thick beer, friends beer, garnished beer, and beer of the protector. How fun. Then it got swept up in Greece and Rome. You know, it was big empire time, so beer got brought up to Europe, but it was a little bit more of a lower class beverage. Upper class were all about the wine, and Romans were like, it's a gift from the gods. And beer people were like, but have you had beer? Also, this is my favorite part, so let's get into it. Brewing was mostly women's work from like early times till the end of the Middle Ages. It was legit a skill expected of all medieval women. They were referred to as alewives, and some of them just expanded and made brewing into a little more of a side hustle, just an alewife girl boss doing her thing. And there's some debate about this, but some of the alewife girl bosses that sold at markets would wear large pointy hats to attract customers. They would brew beer in a giant sort of bowl situation, some might say a cauldron. They had to keep cats so that mice wouldn't come into all the grain. What I'm saying is they were like beer witches, and some think that this is where the iconography of witches really began. And there's some debate, but how incredible! I say we just go with that theory. You feel me? We commit to the beer witches. Who's in? Then we're in the Middle Ages still, and you have a bunch of monasteries and monks who like need sustenance during their fast, and they gotta make some money. To keep with the monastery, you know, they gotta buy all the robes and paint all the ceilings. So a bunch of monasteries developed their own breweries, which helped a bunch of them survive through the Dark Ages. Monks are like, I'm not a regular monk, I'm a cool monk, get it? So then around 1000 AD, people were like, hey, let's put some hops into beer, and hops were just the man beer way to say flower, kind of, because they're really just the flower of the Humulus upulus plant, which is in the hemp family of flowering plants known as Cannabaceae. And if you're like, wait, cannabis? Yeah, it's all one big plant family. Also, the hop flower has separate male and female parts, and only the female parts are used for commercial beer production. So what I'm learning in this research is that women are beer witch flower goddess queens forever. You cannot change my mind. But anyway, the hops made the beer taste better and less bitter and gave us something a lot more like the beer that we have today. So everybody was all hopped up on hops and started using them, and commercial beer production spread to Germany and England and Austria in the 13th century, though they'd been making like chill at home beer since probably like 800 AD. And then it was and Da Vinci is like, here's a naked guy in a circle, and Martin Luther is like, bye Catholic Church. Anyway, Germans are like, listen Linda, I see all the beer stuff happening, and we have decided that we want our beer to be very specific and pure, and it can only have water, barley, and hops, and later yeast. But get all this fruit and sugar and witchcraft out of here, we do not want it. And that rule is called Reinheitsgebot, and a version of it is like still in place today. So you can make like a beer with other things, but you can't call it beer, you have to call it like an alcoholic beverage. So then beer keeps chugging and keeps growing and comes to America, and breweries are popping up, and we discover how yeast causes fermentation. So then beer gets more consistent and things are going good, they're going good. And then people are like, the world is a disaster, there's alcoholism and saloon-based political corruption, that's a direct quote. And there start to be bans on alcohol first in smaller communities, and then things got real big in the first half of the 20th century, and a bunch of countries had some form of prohibition. And it all ended for the US in 1933, but by the end, there were only 160 operating breweries left from 3,200 pre-prohibition. R.I.P. little old school breweries. And then a bunch of the bigger breweries consolidated, especially after World War II, made some giant beer brands. A bunch of craft and microbreweries started popping up everywhere in the 70s. That could be its own whole video, but are now all over the place, and that's lots of fun. And that pretty much catches us up to today. A lot of very magical ladies, hot wet grain stuff, and a monk who is somehow also the mom from Mean Girls. Hope you loved it. Let me know what I should send up next.